Before we begin, please imagine the bell notification is on and you're subscribed to Huna Stories. The house looked the same as it always had from the street. White lights trimmed too precisely, wreaths centered like it had been measured. I parked a little farther down than usual, partly because the curb was crowded, partly because I needed a second before getting out. My kids were already unbuckling. They'd practiced carrying the dish in together, one on each handle, careful not to spill. It mattered to them. I noticed that, and it made me hopeful, in the small, dangerous way. Hope arrives when you know better. Inside, coats piled up. Someone took the dish and thanked the kids like they'd done something important, which they had. The room was warm, loud, familiar in a way that didn't quite reach me. Then my father looked up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even stand. He just lifted an eyebrow the way he always had when he wanted to signal anything was out of place, but not worth real effort. Did no one tell you this was for family? It wasn't the words so much as the ease of them, the confidence that the sentence would land where he wanted it to, the assumption that I would adjust, explain, laugh it off. My youngest looked at me, not scared, just confused. That look, searching, trusting, hit harder than anything my father could have said next. For a split second, my mind ran through its old routines. I could clarify. I could say he misunderstood. I could shrink the moment until it fit somewhere harmless. Instead, I said, "Let's go." Not loudly, not sharply, just enough for my kids to hear. We gathered our coats. I thanked the person who'd taken the dish. I didn't look at my father again. No one stopped us. Someone murmured my name, unsure. I smiled without warmth and kept moving. In the car, the kids were quiet, not the brittle silence of fear, more like they were assembling questions and deciding which ones were allowed. "Are we in trouble?" one of them asked. "No," I said, "we're just going somewhere else." They accepted that. Kids do when the adult doesn't waver. As I drove, memory came in sideways. Other gatherings, other comments dressed up as jokes, the way I'd always been asked to be flexible, to understand, to not make things awkward, the way I'd complied because compliance was easier than clarity. We ate dinner somewhere small and noisy. The kids colored on paper placemats. The food wasn't special. The mood was lighter than it had been in years. Exactly 1 hour after we left, my phone rang. I didn't answer it. I knew without listening that something practical had gone wrong. I had learned to recognize the timing. There are insults you can recover from socially. There are absences you can't. Another call came in, then a text, short, neutral, asking where I was. I waited. At home later, after the kids were asleep, I checked the voicemail. My father's voice sounded different, not apologetic but alert. He asked about a document he needed signed, mentioned a deadline, framed it as routine, as if the earlier comment had been a minor misstep easily forgotten. I didn't call back right away. I opened my laptop instead. The thing no one ever said out loud was that I handled a lot of the invisible work, the approvals, the timing, the connections that kept certain processes smooth. I'd done it quietly, because being quiet made things easier, because it was just family. I sent one email, polite, clear, redirecting the request to the appropriate channel, the one my father preferred when he wanted distance. The reply came fast this time. The second voicemail was sharper, less composed. He asked why I was making things difficult. I noticed he still hadn't mentioned what he'd said. I didn't respond. An hour later, 2 hours after we'd left, the tone changed again. Not loud, not angry. Careful now, he said. He might have spoken out of turn, that maybe things had been misunderstood, that we should talk. I sat with that for a long time. What struck me wasn't the regret, it was how precisely it arrived. Not when my child looked confused, not when we walked out, but when the system stalled. I texted back once, "We can talk another time. Tonight didn't feel like family." I turned the phone face down and went to bed. The holiday passed. Some messages went unanswered, others were handled briefly, professionally. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No confrontation, no reconciliation scene waiting in the wings. What changed was quieter. Invitations became more careful. Language softened. The raised eyebrow disappeared, replaced by something closer to caution. Not respect exactly, but awareness. My kids asked fewer questions about why we didn't go back. When they did, I told them the truth, in pieces, small enough to hold. Sometimes people forget what they're saying, and sometimes leaving is how you remember who you are. I don't know if my father ever fully understood what he lost that night. I know he noticed when it mattered to him. For me, the moment wasn't about winning. It was about choosing not to stand still while someone decided whether my children counted. We still celebrate holidays, just differently now. Smaller rooms, softer voices, no eyebrows raised. And when my kids carry something inside, they know it's because they belong, not because they're being tolerated.